doubted our commitment to democracy, but because they believe that our people deserve a process that is secure, modern, and efficient. The international community is not alone in its call for reform. Here at home, many Bahamians have expressed similar concerns. They see a registration system that still requires long lines and repeated manual verification. They worry about the reliability of paper cards, the risk of impersonation, and the lack of real-time verification at the polls. At the same time, I want to acknowledge that there are genuine concerns about the pace and clarity of the changes. From the public commentary, we have heard a range of views. Many Bahamians support modernizing our electoral system. They see biometric voter ID as a natural step forward, especially in a world where such technology is already widely used for passports, banking, and border control. They want an election system that reflects the 21st century. They want to know that their vote is protected by the best tools available. But they also want to understand how it works. They want reassurance that no one will be left behind and that no voter will be disenfranchised simply because they don't yet have a biometric card. Some believe the process has moved too quickly. Others believe it has taken too long. And many more want to know whether the rollout will be fair, secure, and accessible. These are reasonable questions. This government takes them seriously. So let me just also be clear on one important point. This is not about electronic voting. I repeat, this is not about electronic voting. We're not there yet. Again, maybe sometime in the future we may get there. But we are not here debating electronic voting. This is legislation. This legislation does not introduce online voting, nor does it introduce digital ballots or any form of voting by electronic devices. The process of casting and counting votes remains entirely manual. What we are modernizing is how we register the vote, or how we register voters, how we verify identity, and how we protect the integrity of the roll. Biometric voter cards and electronic poll books are tools to strengthen the front end of the electoral process, not to alter how one votes or casts their votes or how those votes may be tabulated. The ballot box remains at the center of our democracy. This reform ensures that the names on the register are accurate, the credentials secure, and the process credible. That is why we have committed to public education, to a public education campaign. That is why we have ensured that voters who already submitted biometric data for their passport can transition easily. That is why we have emphasized that the new biometric cards are optional and that every eligible voter on the register, regardless of what form of ID they hold, will be able to cast their ballot at the next election. Mr. Speaker, let us be honest with the Bahamian people. Biometric identification is not a new idea that has suddenly appeared. It is not a scheme devised overnight or driven by some political agenda. In fact, Madam Speaker, it was the former administration that introduced the legal authority for biometric cards. It was their law, passed in 2020 by then, that introduced the concept. Our government is not rushing through a brand new idea. We are simply implementing a policy that was already agreed in principle by Parliament in 2020. And now we are focused on creating the legal and operational framework for a secure and efficient electoral process. Let us also remember what is at stake. As more countries move to digital and biometric systems, it is our duty to ensure that the Bahamas embraces technology and remains on the cutting edge of digital transformation. Countries across the Caribbean and Africa have already adopted biometric voter card, like Guyana, Nigeria, Ghana, and the like. They did so to reduce fraud, improve efficiency, and strengthen public trust. The world is changing. And if we want to protect our democracy, we must be willing to evolve with it. The core principle remains, and it must remain. Every eligible Bahamian has the right to register to vote. And that vote, when cast, must be protected. Any reform we pursue must uphold that principle, not undermine it. That is why this legislation matters. Because without reform, we risk clinging to systems that no longer meet the expectations or needs of our people. The task before us is to ensure that the way we register, the way we vote, the way we protect the ballot reflects not only the values of our democracy, but the realities of the time we live in and the expression of the will of our people. That is our duty. That is what this amendment seeks to achieve. As mentioned, Madam Speaker, the road to these reforms did not begin last week, nor did it begin with this government. The journey toward a modern electoral system began under the previous administration in 2020, when the then Free National Movement government introduced legislation to establish a continuous register, commonly called a permanent register, and legal authority for biometric voter identification. At the time, I served as leader of the opposition, and I stood in this very chamber to raise a number of concerns, not in a spirit of obstruction, but out of a sense of duty to protect the integrity of the democratic process. As part of my contribution then, I made it clear that while we supported the idea of a permanent register or continuous register in principle, the process that was unfolding lacked sufficient transparency, proper safeguards, and public education. I pointed to the risk of disenfranchising voters that were then displaced by Hurricane Dorian and economic hardship. I questioned the absence of clear protocols for data collection and verification. I asked how privacy would be protected and what oversight would be established. I asked whether we were rushing a change that required deliberate and careful implementation. Mr. Speaker, not only were those questions left unanswered, they were barely acknowledged. No courtesy letter was sent to invite engagement. No technical briefing was offered to House members, at least not to our side. No attempt was made to convene a bipartisan consultation or public forum. The government of the day made its decision behind closed doors and pushed ahead. As if concerns from our side of the House or the general public were of no relevance. We are determined not to repeat that mistake. A very different approach was taken this time. The Parliamentary Commissioner wrote directly to myself and the leader of the opposition, inviting us to meet with him and his team to discuss the proposed amendments in detail. The Parliamentary Commissioner organized a technical briefing for House members, and he has indicated they will have a vigorous education campaign. I have proposed that his team meet with the Parliamentary Registration Department and the technical experts from Canadian Banknote, the same firm used under his administration to provide a full and transparent briefing on the implementation process. So the opposition, they've asked to meet with the Canadian Banknote. That's available to them. They never made that known to us. What we are doing with them was never offered to us. But I guess that's why we're here and they're there.
Yeah. We're different from them.
Right? And Madam Speaker, this is not a simple gesture. It's not a simple gesture. In fact, the leader of the opposition, we had the timetable that we had planned to debate this bill last week. But the leader of the opposition, he reached out to me, he wrote me, and requested that I put it off for the day. I'll not give the reasons, but I agreed that we'll do it today. Why are you smiling, Mr. Barnabas? I'm trying to ensure that what we are doing, and that was not merely a gesture. It is a deliberate signal that on our side, we believe that electoral reform must rise above partisan politics. Yes. The public has every right to expect that the two major parties, and of course, I must, the COI, because the COI was, they were invited, they attended. You were invited to come to the parliamentary meeting, but I understood why you were not able to make that. Right? So we must find common ground on how we protect the most basic function of a democracy. And that is the right to register to vote, and to be able to exercise that right to vote. The difference between now and then is not only in our actions, it is also in the information we now have. In 2020, I raised those concerns with limited visibility into the technical framework. Today, as Prime Minister, I have the benefit of expert briefings, operational plans, risk assessment, and international examples to inform our path forward. And what I see, Madam Speaker, is a clear opportunity to complete what was started by the previous administration but left unfinished. The legal framework for biometric voter cards, as I indicated, was enacted in 2020. That was only part of the reform. What was never done was the hard work of operationalizing it, building public understanding, securing the IT data infrastructure, and preparing the system for responsible execution. Now, a recollection back then was that we saw the allocation in the budget for these things. I recall that then Minister of National Security spoke about moving to get these cards ready, and the records reflect that much work was being done to be where we are today, but it was not done, it was not completed. So what we're doing now is what they started to do, but was unable to finish it. Why? I leave it to them to respond to and tell us why. But that is the work. But we are now undertaking the completion of that work. So we're not starting from scratch. We are completing the process. But unlike our predecessors, we are doing it with transparency, consultation, and respect for all voices at the table. And that I don't think they could doubt. There are those who now stand in opposition and raise concerns about this reform. Some of them genuine, but I say some politically convenient. But let the record show the government I lead is extending to the opposition a level of courtesy and collaboration that my colleagues and I were never granted when we sat on that side.
Yes. Dark days.
Never. This is leadership, real leadership. We believe that building trust in elections requires more than strong laws. It requires good faith. It requires humility. And it requires treating one another, even across the aisle, with the respect this democratic process demands. So I say to the leader of opposition, your concerns will not be dismissed. Your party will not be sidelined. And I say this also to Central Grand Bahama. The door is open for dialogue, for briefing, and for contribution. And I think we invite you to help strengthen the process, not out of political expedience, but because it is the right thing for you to do for our country. And the Parliamentary Commissioner, at our briefing, indicated to your representative, the Deputy Leader, that his door is open. He said it to the leader of the COI for continued dialogue on this process. And I am available to discuss any of the issues as well. Fortunately for me, I've had the benefit, as I've indicated, to be involved in election law for most of my career, representing successful candidates in an election against a challenge to that success, and very often representing defeated candidates in the election court to overturn a success. And I've done that for many years, from I think my first appearance would have been in 1982, after the 82 elections, and thereafter every one. And not just here in the Bahamas, I've had the privilege of representing political parties in other countries in the Caribbean. So the electoral process means something to me, and it's real to me. And when I speak, I just don't speak as the politician when it comes to electoral reforms or electoral processes. And I wish you to take it from me when I say that, because this is the bedrock of who we are and what we want to be. And so that's why it's important for you to take part. Now, doesn't mean that we will agree with everything. And I think that agreement might be in the process, and that's okay, but not with the desired outcome, because I think we ought to be desiring the same outcome in our reforms. So let us move forward together in the full view of the Bahamian people. Now that we have acknowledged the history of this effort and the principle behind it, let me speak clearly to the legislation that is before us today. As I mentioned, it is not a symbolic bill. It is a substantive set of amendments that modernize how we register to vote, issue voter identification, and administer polling stations. These amendments are targeted, precise, and legally sound. They give full effect to reforms already passed into law, and they provide the tools necessary to protect electoral integrity without limiting access to the ballot box. Among the changes, we are replacing the concept of a permanent voter card with a secure biometric card that carries a 10-year validity. That change is now embedded in the new section 14A. This card will be similar to size, shape, and feel as to your driver's license and or NIB card. The card will be valid for 10 years. This approach reflects what is already done in other national systems. It ensures that voter credentials remain current without requiring wholesale re-registration. The Act also introduces a new Section 14B, which mandates a national voter verification exercise once every 10 years. This is not just about the card. It is about the integrity of the register. During this process, voters will appear in person, confirm or update their personal and biometric information, and if needed, receive a new card. The Parliamentary Commissioner will have the authority to conduct this exercise with flexibility in timing and location, and penalties are set for false declarations. What is important here, Madam Speaker, is that we are not starting from zero. Approximately 80% of Bahamians who have registered or are on the register, 80% of those who are now on the continuous register already have biometric data on file with the Passport Office. This legislation allows those voters to consent to a secure data transfer, eliminating the need for repeat biometric capture. This is an efficient, privacy-conscious way to build continuity in the new system. We also introduced a new Section 19A, which formalizes the procedures for issuing these biometric cards, ensuring that every card issued is linked to a verified entry into the register, signed electronically, and backed by a secure digital counterfoil. This is what modernization looks like, not just technology for its own sake, but rigorous systems to protect the vote. The use of electronic poll books is another major advancement included in this bill. These secure digital devices will allow for fast, accurate retrieval of the voter register at polling stations, including counterfoil data for each voter card. Print copies will also be required at every station as a backup. This is a layered system with digital innovation and traditional safeguards working together. We have also codified how to handle any biometric mismatches. Section 57 is amended to clarify that if a card fails to verify through biometric means, the presiding officer must still allow the voter to vote once identity is confirmed through other legal methods. This prevents any potential disenfranchisement and reinforces the guiding principle that no Bahamian should be denied their right to vote due to technical fault or errors. I now turn to a concern raised by the Leader of the Opposition in his recent correspondence. He questioned the lawful removal of approximately 15,000 names from the register. This matter must be addressed with full understanding of how our system is structured and how it works. Now, I think at our briefing, the Parliamentary Commissioner indicated to us that approximately 15,000 names were removed from the register because those names they have discovered were persons had died, and because of their death, they removed. So between 2017 to date, he said about 15,000 persons were removed from the register. Now, what I do recall is that even prior to 2017, a number of names were still on the register of persons who would have died and were not removed. Because I discovered that in about at least 5 persons in my constituency who had died, names were still on the register. And that was throughout a number of the constituency. So it may not be between 2017 and 2025, 15,000 persons died during that period. It could be a hangover from prior to 2017. But those 15,000 names were identified as the Parliamentary Commissioner, that they were persons who they confirmed had passed and their name ought not to be on the register. But just thinking about 15,000 names coming off the register, the way it was put in the letter to me, the responsibility, first of all, the responsibility to maintain the register falls squarely within the powers and under the Parliamentary Commissioner. And that authority does not reside with a minister, a member of cabinet, or any political figure. The removal of deceased persons, disqualified persons, or ineligible persons is not a discretionary action. It is mandated by the law. Sections 13A, 13B, and Section 20 of the existing Act give the Commissioner express power to investigate, verify, and remove names where warranted. These are legal duties. They are not optional, and they are not subject to political interference. The Commissioner's independence is guaranteed by our Constitution and must be respected in both principle and practice. Removing names of a deceased person or those no longer eligible to vote is part of maintaining a credible electoral register. That should not be controversial. We cannot ask for clean elections and then object when the law is followed to ensure precisely that outcome. If the opposition or the person removed or any other party believes an individual was wrongly removed from the register, so if the appropriate course of action is to object of the removal, present that case to the Parliamentary Commissioner for review under the legal procedures that now exist under the Act. But it is not responsible to suggest wrongdoing without evidence. Because if you have the evidence, the law provides that the Parliamentary Commissioner, he's human, right? Unlike anyone else, we're prone to make an error. And or the information that he has might not be full or may not be accurate. And if you have information that is more accurate than his, you present that to him instead of suggesting that there's some wrongdoing in what happened. And if there was an error in removing the person's name, that name could be restored. The law allows for it. Right? But to continue to suggest wrongdoing, it risks damaging public confidence in the system. So if a person's name is removed of the register, right, they have the right to go to the Parliamentary Commissioner and say, look, you move my name, and you ought not to move it because here are the facts. And the Parliamentary Commissioner could assess the facts and put him back on. It happens all the time. Right? I've had a number of cases of it. Now, it's also important to state, for the record,
The chair recognizes the honourable member from Marco City.
Madam Speaker, I listened to the Prime Minister, had no interest in interrupting, but I think the Prime Minister seeks to overstate a question that has been raised in the letter. It might have been useful if he had just read the section so the public could decide. The draft I'm looking at, Prime Minister, says, we also understand that 15,000 registered voters have been removed from the register. We require a full list of these voters and their registration details, and we request that this information be made public. The public has a right to know who have been removed and why and under what criteria. So this is not, it's not an accusation, it is a request for further details, nor was it an attempt to, again, suggest any wrongdoing. So I just think the Prime Minister, it's not necessary to overstate the point, just simply point to what was actually sent to you.
Thank you for refreshing my mind of what you indicated, but I'm pointing this out so you could probably appreciate that the question asked was to the wrong person. That, see what I'm saying? I'm pointing out that all these issues, that's what I'm saying. I started out by saying that I understood the question, what you said. I said, and I was pointing out to you, right, and you probably didn't get it, and I might have not been expressly saying it, but what you asked of me does not reside in me, that you should have written it to the Parliamentary Commissioner. He moved the names. I don't have the list to provide to you. I wouldn't have the list. He would have the list. And he would know why he moved them. I know that in our meeting, he expressed that he had about 15,000 had been moved. That information was passed to you, no doubt, by your representative. And he also said that those persons had died. And but to ask me to give it to you, it was wrong. I just want you to, right now.
Madam Speaker, again, on a point of order, the Member of Parliament, just to be candid, is attempting to be cute on this matter. In issuing the letter to the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and Salvador, again, we indicated the areas of concern, which we have expressed to the correct authority, which is the Parliamentary Commissioner. All we did is indicated in a letter to the Prime Minister several concerns that we have. So his attempt to mislead the public as if he understands the system and we don't is incorrect. That's the point. That's the point that we are making. That's the point.
Okay, well, fine. I'm happy to know that you understand the system. I didn't suggest that you didn't. What I'm saying...
No, you didn't suggest.
You
stated it. You didn't suggest. You stated it.
Well, you don't understand. Okay.
Yeah.
But you do understand. You do not understand the state. You do not understand the system. I stated that. And you now correct me to say you understand it. I take your correction. You understand it. I would not reread what I'm saying. I told you, and you can just look at the sections, 13A, 13B, and 22 of the existing Act. It gives the Commissioner the express powers. And I'm saying that you suggested wrongdoing. I didn't say that you said it's wrong. The suggestion of wrongdoing, the specter of wrongdoing. No, it's just written, right? It's irresponsible to suggest wrongdoing without evidence. That's what I said. That's what I said. See, sometimes you should listen. No. That's what I said. So to do so.
That's exactly what I objected to. Because you were, if in fact you were not issuing an accusation, I believe he's qualified to handle the discussion by himself. You should be quiet, actually. So Prime Minister, I'm saying, sorry, Madam Speaker, again, if the Prime Minister is now saying I did not level an accusation, I then I'll take my seat. So I'm glad that he's put on the record that at no point we issued an accusation. But the fact that he is protesting asking, nor did I suggest any wrongdoing. But now that he is raising the issue, again, I think we'll have time to point out, Prime Minister, you've made a number of public statements where the facts,
Honourable member.
the facts have been inaccurate, and yet we did not level an accusation. We just simply asked that the list be published for the public to see. You could miss something, the parliamentary registration department can miss something, and of course the public can look at the list and determine if it's accurate or not. That's the simple request. Make the list available.
Let me just say, Madam Speaker, I think what I have to say will answer what he has said. And I start out by saying it this way, that it is important to note and to state, for the record, that the law provides a clear avenue for any person who believes they have been wrongly removed from the register. That's the law, right? Section 22 and Section 94 of the Act outline the procedures through which a voter may protest their removal. They may file an objection and have that matter reviewed by the relevant authorities. This process is not only available, but well established in law. And if they disagree with the parliamentary commissioner, after they make their case, they have a right of appeal to the courts. Right. The parliamentary commissioner is duty-bound to investigate and respond accordingly. No Bahamian is left without recourse. That is what legal integrity looks like. Not assumptions or insinuations, but the right to be heard and the protection of due process. This ensures that the register is accurate, but also fair. Madam Speaker, this bill strengthens the legal architecture of our elections. It completes a process, as I indicated, already endorsed by Parliament, and it provides clear rules, modern tools, and accountable oversight for all aspects of voter registration and verification. These amendments give practical effect to a vision for fair and modern elections in the Bahamas. They demonstrate that we are serious about safeguarding the democratic process, not just for the next election, but for generations to come. The Progressive Liberal Party did not inherit the right to vote. We didn't inherit it. We fought for it.
Oh, yes.
At a time when voting was a privilege for the few. It was the PLP that stood in the front lines to make it a right for all. Not just for PLPs, a right for all. We dismantled the barriers of race, class, and gender. We made the vote count for the many, not just the few privileged, or the privileged few. We're not here to be lectured by those who came late to the fight for freedom and electoral reform. You know, it was the Free National Movement. The Free National Movement did not lead the struggle for suffrage in this country. And they still have yet to confront the legacy of those whose politics.
I am asking the member, are you yielding?
A point of order, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member
Thank
from
you.
Marco City.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I believe that the history of the Progressive Liberal Party, having lost, I believe, some 8 members, are those persons who are the founders of the Free National Movement. This whole business of seeking to claim a period and omit the participation of founding members of the party who were intimately engaged in this very fight is in fact dishonest, Madam Speaker. It is dishonest. We share in that legacy. They do not have a monopoly on that fight. They do not. They do not. It is untrue.
No history is our history.
It is untrue.
Madam Speaker, the rights I speak of all predates 1970, you know. They all predates 1970. The FNM only came into I talk about the free national movement. I ain't talking about individuals. I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about the free national movement. Right? They only came into existence in 1970. All right? I'm saying it's the PLP. See, the PLP. All right? All right? And you see, and Madam Speaker, they still have yet to confront the FNM, the legacy of those politics they inherited. They inherited politics. Right? The very same interests that spent decades trying to deny Bahamians full participation in their own democracy. Yes. And 52 years later, 52 years later, they're still struggling to explain our cease trying to do. Their fierce opposition to us becoming independent free country from the shackles of our colonial masters. So let me say this without apology. In your DNA. I say this without apology, Madam Speaker. This government will not allow the opposition to speak loosely about the administration of our electoral process. We will not allow them to sow doubt for political gain or to cast accusations of wrongdoing without evidence. We are not afraid of scrutiny, but we will not sit by while those who legislated this process attempt to now undermine it with reckless commentary. If the leader of the opposition or any member opposite believes that there is wrongdoing, just bring the evidence. That's all we say. What is unacceptable is innuendo and political antics. This is a time for responsible, mature debate about national reform and the protection of our democracy, not a time for partisan theater. And we will not let the FNM, whose historical record on enfranchisement remains uncomfortable and unresolved. So there's no moral high ground for them. Mr. Speaker, the amendments before us strengthen the right to vote, the right to register to vote. They do not limit it. Every eligible Bahamian, regardless of what form of ID they hold, will be able to vote in the next general election once they are on the electoral register. The biometric voter card is not a barrier. It is a tool to improve verification, identification, to reduce fraud, and modernize our process. It is optional for the time being, and hopefully we'll morph to it being mandatory. It is secure, and it is designed to build confidence, not confusion. The opposition's attempt to manufacture panic over reform they themselves legislated is not just disingenuous, I say it's disgraceful. When they passed the original amendment in 2020, they said nothing of disenfranchisement. They held no consultations. They dismissed our concerns without a second thought. And now, with the same framework in place, they claim to be the defenders of the vote. There's a difference between standing up for voters and standing in way of progress. This government will not allow the line between those two to be blurred. We are here to protect the process, not to politicize it. The register will be cleaned because it must be cleaned. The Parliamentary Commissioner will do his job because the law requires it. Names of deceased persons, disqualified individuals, and ineligible entries will be removed. That is not suppression. That is electoral integrity. And I say this to the opposition. If you want to defend the right to register to vote and the right to vote, let's start by respecting the systems that protect it. Start by being honest with the Bahamian people about the role you played in creating this framework. And start by confronting your own discomfort with the truth of your political history. We are not here to run out the clock. We're here to deliver a modern, credible, and inclusive voting system. One that can withstand scrutiny, one that reflects the will of the people, and one that holds up not only in Parliament, but in every community across this country. The PLP will always defend the right to register to vote. We will not be intimidated, distracted, or delayed. This bill is not just about technology. This is not about electronic voting. It is about trust. It is about fairness. It is about delivering an election where every vote counts and every citizen knows that their voice matters. If I may have 2 more minutes. Okay. This is our duty, and we intend to carry it out with discipline, with conviction, and without fear. What is before this Honorable House today is not the beginning of an idea. It is the conclusion of a process that was started 5 years ago. The former administration made the decision to move to a continuous or permanent register. They passed a law to allow for biometric voter identification. But after passing the law, they did not implement it. They left behind a legal framework with no infrastructure, no public education, no safeguards, and no real plan for execution.
Not finishers.
It has fallen to this government to finish the job.
Yep.
We are not here to relitigate what was done in 2020. We are here to bring order to the process, to complete what was started, and to do so with discipline, transparency, and fairness. These amendments are not about changing direction. They're about delivering on what was promised to the Bahamian people. A voter registration system that is secure, modern, and worthy of the democracy we have built together over the last 60 years. Yes. We have laid out the legal protections. We have made clear that biometric cards are optional. We have ensured that no eligible Bahamian on the register will be turned away from the polls. And we have made certain that the Parliamentary Commissioner retains his independence and authority to protect the register without interference. All of this is now embedded in law because we believe the vote is too important to be managed by guesswork or political instinct. The bill, Madam Speaker, closes the loop. It brings certainty to what was left vague. It finishes what the opposition began but did not complete. It brings closure to a legislative chapter that should never have been left open. And it does so while respecting the rights of voters, the authority of institutions, and the demand from the public for confidence in the process. The Progressive Liberal Party has never been afraid of reform. We do the work, we take the responsibility, and we follow through. I commend this bill to the House and call on all members to support it.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Is there a seconder? The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Freetown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in this honorable place again only by the will of God and through the grace of the great people of the Freetown constituency. And Madam Speaker, I actually am the minister in whose portfolio the Parliamentary Registration Department falls. And so one may wonder why it is I didn't move the bill. But Madam Speaker, the honourable member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador would have already alluded to much correspondence passing between the leader of the opposition and himself. And so, Madam Speaker, I thought it fit that the Prime Minister ought to answer directly. And Madam Speaker, I will now provide some meat on the flesh that explains some of what is happening. Yeah, meat on the flesh. Yes. Pay attention to what it says in Barnabas. Madam Speaker, the bill itself contains, excluding the short title, 19 clauses, 17 of which relate to the biometric card and processes related thereto, and 2 clauses that adjust timing as requested by the Parliamentary Commissioner and his team. At this time, Madam Speaker, I would wish to acknowledge in the gallery the Parliamentary Commissioner and his team. The Parliamentary Commissioner, Mr. Harrison Thompson. You can. Carolyn Burrows, who is responsible for registration. Yvonne Taylor, who is responsible for the computer section at BRB. Lucretia Dane Roll, who is the project manager for the CDN project. Sherlyn Hall, a former commissioner himself and now a consultant. Mr. Jeffrey McPhee, the principal training officer. And Mr. Ron Major from the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, election supply officer. Madam Speaker, I thought to do that as persons often start to relate matters directly with a minister or a prime minister without understanding that it's driven by the public servants who serve faithfully, and that often things that are directed as criticism to a political directorate is really disrespectful to the public servants who serve. But Madam Speaker, I've been briefed over the time of my tenure by 3 parliamentary commissioners, starting with Mr. Lovato Duncanson, who in fact commenced this project, moving to the biometric card, followed by Mr. Arthur Taylor, who took the baton and carried it, and then finally Mr. Harrison Thompson, who was responsible for finishing the work. And so, Madam Speaker, as much as politicians may like to take credit for things happening, it takes the will, the application, and the hard work of public servants to move things to conclusion, and I acknowledge that openly today, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the reality of our system, lest we overlook it, is that the election process has a number of participants. The public is the major one in terms of being voters, but political parties play a part in the system as well. Although the Parliamentary Commissioner and his team work to ensure that only people who reside in an area may be registered in that area, they have limited resources and abilities. Political parties have a duty, an obligation, and in fact an interest to participate in that process. And Madam Speaker, I say that for this reason. Some questions may seem benign until you examine the context. And I'll give you an example, Madam Speaker. Every political party, and I would be so bold as saying even the COI and some independents, request and receive from the Parliamentary Registration Department today and continuously copies of the register. You received it electronically for the election that took place in 2021, and I was advised by Mr. Arthur Taylor that they continue to come and receive them, inclusive of the Free National Movement. And so to find out who is no longer on the list is the simple process, because they're all digitized, of comparing the register that you received for the election in 2021 against the register you just received in 2025. And you can do the work for yourself and see who is missing or who has been transferred. It behooves the political party with that information to ask a question that suggests that they do not have that information. I think the Honorable Prime Minister was not being cute, but was being nice and kind in how he characterized it. If you report someone to teacher about information that you yourself possess, you know who was on the register in 2021. You can determine who was on the register in 2025. You don't need to ask the commissioner. You certainly don't need to ask the Prime Minister. It must be stated for a purpose. And I'm not being cute, and I'm not being kind. That is what that statement suggests. Madam Speaker, it is a very simple matter, you know, and it's always amazing how confusion seems to follow some people. Because, Madam Speaker, I would wish to read directly from the report of the OAS Observer Mission, made up of observers from the CARICOM region, from the wider Organization of American States region, who came, who spoke to everyone, voters, political parties, and themselves observed the process. And what they say, Madam Speaker, is very, very enlightening, particularly with regard to the biometric card. And they say, Madam Speaker, under voter ID cards, they actually have a heading for this itself. They say, the continued use of voter ID cards with technical deficiencies remained a source of concern in the 2021 polls, particularly the lack of security features to prevent the improper use of those voters' cards, which are prepared and issued in a largely manual fashion. This concern was also noted by the OAS mission to the 2017 general election. It's the second time in a row they're telling us this, Madam Speaker. And they say, the mission therefore recommends modernizing electoral processes in the Bahamas by continuing to digitize registration procedures. And I will stick a pin there, Madam Speaker. When they say continuing to digitize, that should indicate to everyone that there was already some digitization at the point of the 2021 election. And moving towards the use of biometric voter ID cards as recommended by the 2017 OAS mission and as stipulated in the Parliamentary Elections Amendment Act. So they're saying, we recommended it to you in 2017, and on top of that, you stipulated it, you made it the law that you have not yourself followed. And then if you find, Madam Speaker, that a country makes a law to answer a concern and steadfastly refuse to follow the law that they make, then it becomes a matter of default. So they were told this because they won in 2017. They had the report. I would imagine my predecessor did exactly what I did, which was receive a briefing from the Parliamentary Registration Department that went through the recommendations of the Election Observers Report and received the brief as to how, firstly, which we intend to implement, and an implementation plan. I must assume that my predecessor received that in 2017. Some of it showed up 3 years later, just the idea, because they're good at ideas, Madam Speaker. What they're very bad at is actual delivery. Mind you, there was a prime minister whose delivery revolved around his moniker, but sadly he is gone from them, apparently never to return. But there are no delivery boys in the FNM today. And so, Madam Speaker, the OAS was very clear that this is a matter that we must address, and we have addressed. And they continue, these steps will support the efforts of the authorities to improve efficiency and security in election and reduce the level of human error while deterring efforts at forgery or fraudulent alterations. Now, who could argue against that? Well, I can tell you, Madam Speaker, who could argue against that. There are a number of persons who have 2 voters' cards, literally 2 of the paper voters' cards. And we know how it's done. I turn up to register. I am Wayne Wallace, because that's my mother's maiden name, and I get a card. And a couple months later, I turn up and I'm Wayne Monroe, and I get another voter's card. And I have 2. Sometimes it may happen because somebody is registered and instead of transferring, they just register where they now are. And so you have these issues that human frailty permits, some innocent, some downright criminal. And the persons who can effectively argue against this and would be very set against this would be somebody who wants to end up with 2 cards. And the reason they would be against it, Madam Speaker, is because everyone knows now about facial recognition. Everybody knows that once you have a system where your picture and your fingerprints are there, the system will hunt and say, we've seen this face before, and we've seen it here. And so your ability to end up with more than 1 voter's card is greatly reduced to practically eliminated. So those persons have a big problem with this law. They have a good reason to have a big problem with this law. And that good reason would be that it will cut down on their ability to do nonsense, to manipulate the electoral process. I would suggest, Madam Speaker, that all good, decent persons might have questions and issues that I would seek now to address, Madam Speaker, but we would have no time for those who wish to resist this change to continue their nefarious practices. Madam Speaker, the bill is very, very simple, and it just builds on what happened before. The Honorable Prime Minister has already done the historical context, and so I won't trouble myself with that. I'll take us through the bill very quickly, Madam Speaker. The first clause simply does something that wasn't done in the 2020 bill. It defines what biometrics are. So biometrics could include retinal scans. We're not going for that. We're simply going for your fingerprints, your face, and your digital signature. Now that should be not controversial, Madam Speaker. I had the occasion to accompany my son to the U.S. Embassy to apply for his student visa. And without any hesitation, he delivered up the prints of all 10 of his fingers and a digital photo that will be digitized. So everyone who likes to travel to Miami and has a visa has already surrendered those biometrics to the United States government and surrender them every time they appear at an airport to have a photo taken or a fingerprint taken. So this is not new or controversial. As the Prime Minister has indicated, everyone who has an e-passport has already surrendered those. The process of requiring consent, Madam Speaker, is to address data privacy. Because we got it from you for your passport, we can't use it for anything else without your consent. And so the voter can be secured in knowing that the government is respecting their data privacy. But that is all that does, is give a definition. And then clause 3 just permits the Parliamentary Commissioner to use information for verification. Clause 4 is a consequential cleanup amendment. And then, Madam Speaker, Clause 5 simply introduces the time period of 10 years for verification. And that is simply a period, Madam Speaker, that permits you to come back and ensure that this person should still have a card. Now, Madam Speaker, that doesn't stop the Parliamentary Commissioner doing exercises that's sometimes called scrutineering exercises to go into constituencies to do verification themselves. That doesn't limit them to do that. But it mandates that every 10 years this should happen. And that's important for a very simple reason, Madam Speaker. And I'll take the example of deaths. The Parliamentary Registration Department currently receives the vital statistics on deaths from the Registrar General's Department, which lists all the death certificates. Well, anyone who reflects will know that that is not a complete record of every Bahamian who dies, because many Bahamians today now die in other countries. They might die in the US receiving treatment, Canada receiving treatment, Cuba receiving treatment. Their deaths are recorded there. And so, Madam Speaker, although the Parliamentary Registration Department will take responsible steps to collect deaths that occur here, there is still the next step. But they are constantly working, Madam Speaker, and there are issues about how do we have a record of every body that is flown in here, because it comes in as cargo, or persons who are cremated and their ashes are returned. So there will always be, Madam Speaker, a need to ensure that the register is clean, bearing in mind that the previous administration made it permanent and continuous. And so, Madam Speaker, that is what Clause 5 does. Clause 6 just is dealing with the voter's card and the need for the counterfoil. And all that is doing, Madam Speaker, is putting in digital terms what happens now with paper. So just as you have a paper counterfoil, you'll now have an electronic one. And it's as simple as that. Madam Speaker, the Clause 7 simply deals with the issuing of the card and deals with the formalities of how you get your card. You have to sign for it. The person has to sign for it. And that's just simple, not really complex or controversial. And then, Madam Speaker, Clause 8 deals with basically what you will have on the card, and that it will contain the register, and it'll contain all of the information that is currently captured on your voter's card. Again, should not be very controversial. And then Clause 9, Madam Speaker, does something that is obvious. It gives the Parliamentary Commissioner the ability to talk about reissuing the card if he is satisfied that your fingerprints are no longer scannable. So that's should not be controversial. Clause 10 and 11, Madam Speaker, the two clauses that do not deal with the biometric card, and they basically provide the Parliamentary Registration Department a window of 5 days to do certain acts, and that is drawn basically from them saying, we've looked at this process now, we've seen it over a number of elections, the advance poll is getting larger and larger in size, so these days need to be expanded for us to do this sensibly, so people aren't bungled up, so that we have proper processing. And that should not be controversial either, Madam Speaker. The Clause 12, Madam Speaker, is a very simple one, and Clause 12 provides for the electronic access at polling places. The point made here, Madam Speaker, is we're in the Bahamas, right? So things aren't perfect. Power goes off everywhere, internet goes down everywhere. Heathrow Airport was closed for a number of times because of electronic glitches. It happens all over the world. So we don't take for granted that the system will work, and so we have paper backup. Again, all of the following clauses relate to that, and it should not be really controversial. Clause 17 puts in criminal offenses related to misuse of the e-poll books to ensure the public that there are consequences if you misuse it. And Madam Speaker, the rest of it basically deals with, one, how the new card will look, and two, Madam Speaker, a transitional provision that makes it quite clear that the parliamentary commissioner is able to conduct voter verification exercises as he sees fit before the next general election. Now, Madam Speaker, for persons who say this is being done in haste, that misapprehends that this is being worked on by Lovato Duncanson, Arthur Taylor, and now Mr. Thompson and his team. Anyone who has had a passing fancy with doing things in the public service, inclusive of procurement, everyone on the other side, except St. Anne's, has had the privilege and honor of working in the public service as a policymaker and with the public service. And they are qualified, able, and really have a duty to explain to the public who have not had that ability the fact that this does not happen overnight. After all, Madam Speaker, they got the recommendations in 2017, and they didn't manage to do it in 5 years. Well, 4.5 years. So to suggest that all of this work was done successfully for delivery, carrying on from the beginning part of the idea, would be to not do the public the service that they deserve by explaining how things work. There is nothing hasty about this, Madam Speaker. A lot of work and effort has been put in by these public servants, continue to be put in by these public servants who have, I would state it quite simply, a grasp of their responsibility to themselves and to their country in making sure this is done correctly. And so there is no speed in it. We've established there is nothing new in it in terms of the biometrics. Canadian banknote is selected as they already hold this information, and there was a policy judgment that the information should reside in as few places as possible for obvious security reasons. Madam Speaker, as the member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador has eloquently set out, the right to vote came by struggle. The right to prevent people misusing the vote by voting multiple times is a continual struggle for the parliamentary commissioner and his team. It is a struggle that they engage in daily. It is a struggle that they are well equipped to meet. It is a struggle that they require the assistance not only of members of the public, but of the political directorate in ensuring that they receive the support that they need and not cynicism. And so, Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to say that in the Ministry of National Security, we have a saying that we command very little and coordinate a lot. But I have the privilege, Madam Speaker, in this area to say that it is served by a very exemplary set of public servants, qualified to do their jobs. I commit to them not to interfere with them as they do their jobs. And for your edification, Madam Speaker, we've gone an extra mile and given them their own legal counsel so that they are not necessarily bound in the first instance by the Office of the Attorney General, which is a member of the executive, but notwithstanding their counsel, they do take counsel, but with the benefit of having their own independent legal advice, as they are actually the arbiters of a contest between the government and the pretenders. And so, Madam Speaker, it is something that we take very seriously from a matter of structure, and we will continue to structure the system so that it upholds and protects the sacrosanct right to vote and does so independently. And so, Madam Speaker, I am satisfied on behalf of the people of Freetown that this is a positive step. Could you imagine a voter's card that people actually accept as government ID? Because nobody accepts the paper card as government ID. Nobody, not even the government. And so, Madam Speaker, could you imagine that as a development for some persons who simply need ID? And so we must be practical about these things. We must participate. And because of those reasons, Madam Speaker, Freetown supports and seconds this bill.
Thank you, Honourable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Parliamentary Elections Act. As many? The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for St. Barnabas.
Morning. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise on behalf of the wonderful people of St. Barnabas who reside in the communities of Coconut Grove, Black Village, Big Pond, Rock Crusher, and the Oaksfield community. I am grateful, Madam Speaker, to Almighty God for allowing me to wake up this morning. And what I will continue to say is the greatest nation in the world, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Madam Speaker. And I pray that Almighty God, as I prepare to celebrate my 49th birthday on September 10th, and I pray that Almighty God will Almighty God will continue to give me the health and strength to see that through, Madam Speaker, and to watch the full manifestation of my children's purpose in this life, especially, Madam Speaker, our 9-month-old, Madam Speaker. And while I'm on my feet, Madam Speaker, while I'm not like the member for Yamakro who's celebrating an anniversary anytime soon, I do want to thank my wife Nia for her constant support, patience indeed, and the balance that she brings to my life. Yes, I'll take that one too. And the endurance. Madam Speaker, thank you very much. The good book says when you find a wife, you find a good thing. And I thank Almighty God for my good thing, Madam Speaker.
Yes, sir. It's mine, man.
I gotta go back home, you know. Madam Speaker, we have a great country, as we all know. And the Commonwealth of the Bahamas continues to fight the odds and overcome many challenges over its course of its history, even in a post-independent Bahamas, Madam Speaker. And so I am often reminded, Madam Speaker, and I remind myself, that we must continue to give thanks and appreciation, Madam Speaker, to the Bahamian people. And as much as politicians and some in similar category get a lot of the limelight, it is truly those regular Bahamians, if you will, Madam Speaker, who don't look for the camera, or their private avocation and what they do has no cameras involved on a regular basis, but they continue to grind and work on behalf of the Bahamian people and on behalf of our country. And so, Madam Speaker, I do want to begin, as I am the first opposition speaker, to thank the members of the Parliamentary Registration Department led by Mr. Thompson for your continued work, not just now in live time in preparation for a general election, but indeed the service that you all have given to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas over your many, many years. And so we appreciate your efforts, and we are grateful for all that you continue to do on behalf of the country. Madam Speaker, Prime Minister, I'm going to start off by invoking some of your words. I stand, Madam Speaker, as the Prime Minister said, not in the spirit of obstruction. That's what the Prime Minister said. I like that. Not in the spirit of obstruction, Prime Minister, but to offer some very important thoughts and sentiments relative to this piece of legislation, Madam Speaker. The Prime Minister also used the word that I think is apt for this debate today, and that is there's a level of maturity, Madam Speaker, and I would indeed add to that a level of sobriety that comes to this discussion. Because when we talk about the electoral process and the underpinning of our democracy, it is a serious, serious matter, Madam Speaker. And save for all of the political back and forth that may ensue, whether in here or out in the public, I truly feel I can say without reservation that each member here, and both the Progressive Liberal Party and the Free National Movement, understands and appreciates the magnitude of the importance of our democracy, the changes that are made to increase transparency in this process and to increase integrity, Madam Speaker. Just of note, Madam Speaker, we note that the Prime Minister would have littered throughout his presentation the context of the involvement of the Progressive Liberal Party, and in contrast, in his view, that of the Free National Movement. And there is some historical facts there that the Prime Minister would have presented. But just to emphasize, Madam Speaker, that, and the member for the Leader of the Opposition mentioned it, and I think it's important while I stand on my feet, just to do the same, Madam Speaker. Because as it is often said, if you're not going to tell your story, somebody else will. And that is, Madam Speaker, that members of the Free National Movement were very much involved in ensuring that democracy thrives in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Madam Speaker. It cannot be denied again. Historical facts are historical facts in terms of what the Progressive Liberal Party would have been responsible for. There's no reason to go around it, just how we can be assured in saying that there are things that the Free National Movement has been responsible for in this profound experience that's called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Madam Speaker. And I will say, Madam Speaker, when we talk about democracy, Madam Speaker, you know, we talk about that one man, one woman, one vote, Madam Speaker. You know, we talk about, Madam Speaker, the right, inalienable right of every Bahamian to be able to exercise their voice with whatever veracity that they choose, Madam Speaker. But there's also another important part of our democracy, and that is the right for us to dissent and for Bahamians to dissent in a lawful manner, Madam Speaker. And I've mentioned that, Madam Speaker, because in our view, and I believe that history will bear this out, the Free National Movement, Madam Speaker, has been responsible for the deepening of the democracy in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, yes, Madam Speaker, yes, in a way, Madam Speaker, that allows the Bahamian people to this day to enjoy many of their democratic rights, Madam Speaker. I always think about it on a daily basis as we drive, and you listen to talk shows and so forth. The ability of Bahamians to criticize their government, as they should be able to. It's a wonderful, Madam Speaker, contribution, and an impactful and profound contribution that the Free National Movement would have made under the leadership of Hubert Ingram to the deepening and the development of our democracy, Madam Speaker. And we cannot let that fact go unmentioned here this morning, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this particular bill, there's been a lot of discussions, Madam Speaker, in here and in the media, Madam Speaker. But like I said, the Prime Minister talked about not operating in a spirit of obstruction. So while I said last week, Madam Speaker, during the debate, that oftentimes I wish that there was a pedestal, not a pedestal, but something right there in the middle of the floor where you can go and stand, if not just for the reason that standing there might indicate to the public, or would indicate to the public and some persons, that what you're attempting to say or what you're about to say, it's not meant to be political, Madam Speaker, but that there is a neutrality in the source of which you speak and your motivation, Madam Speaker, because the reality of it is, Madam Speaker, whether you're over there or over here, even when your intent is sincere, Madam Speaker, and I'm not talking about when both sides legitimately question the sincerity, right, or they feel that the other side is being disingenuous, but I'm talking about sincerely when there are legitimate questions to ask and legitimate points to make, not that it adds up to the opposition, complete opposition of a bill, but just to highlight the concerns that are out there on behalf of the Bahamian people, Madam Speaker. It is often seen as a political position that is taken, and while that may be so in some cases, there are some cases that is not the case, Madam Speaker. And so again, Madam Speaker, not standing up in any spirit of obstruction, there are some things we wish to highlight, some concerns. It has been said, obviously, by the Prime Minister and the member for Freetown that this bill started under the Free National Movement, Madam Speaker. There was a time there that as we got close to the general election, the government felt at the time that it was not enough time, that a year was not enough time to complete the full implementation of it at the time, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, I want to start off by talking about the 15,000 registered voters that, deceased persons, we just qualify that have been moved from the register. And obviously the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition would have gone back and forth on this issue a few minutes ago, right? But I want to read first very quickly, Madam Speaker, the first two paragraphs of the objects and reasons. It said that this bill, which seeks to amend the Parliamentary Elections Act, Chapter 7, is a comprehensive effort to modernize the electoral framework in the Bahamas. It ensures the framework remains robust, secure, and accessible for all citizens. A key focus of this bill is the introduction of biometric voter cards, which will include advanced security features such as digitized fingerprints, facial images, and digital signatures. These cards will have a validity period of 10 years, replacing the previous system of permanent voter cards. To support this transition, this bill provides for a voter verification exercise every decade, requiring voters to provide updated biometric data to confirm or amend their registration details. Additionally, this bill introduces the e-poll book, a secure electronic device containing voter registers to streamline voter verification at polling stations. These measures aim to improve the accuracy, security, and efficiency of the electoral process, significantly reducing the risk of fraud or tampering and ensuring the integrity of the electoral process. On this issue, Madam Speaker, of the 15,000 deceased voters, the question that we have, Madam Speaker, and other members of our caucus will amplify this, Madam Speaker, is I've heard the Prime Minister talk about the legal framework that allows you to ascertain who these persons may be and so forth. But, Madam Speaker, if there's a place in government, in the Bahamian psyche, where transparency should operate at its optimum, at its complete optimum, it is this process of the electoral process and so forth. I will say we are very grateful to the engagement of Mr. Thompson and his team, who answered questions that we would have asked. On this particular question, we wanted to know why it couldn't be made public who these 15,000 persons are, right? We were given an answer, Madam Speaker, that we accept that that was from their vantage point. What is the situation with that? But why not, Madam Speaker, be as transparent? Again, let me clear it up. Not that they weren't being transparent, but in terms of this information, Madam Speaker, of the 15,000 deceased persons, why can't we be as transparent as we can, Madam Speaker, that the law will allow? As transparent as the Prime Minister said, if you look at the legal framework, Madam Speaker. All right? Madam Speaker, there's a question too, and Prime Minister, I thought that your point, sir, about asking persons at some point in the future to register, right? I thought that was a good point. Obviously, we have not discussed it and so forth. So I don't want to claim that that's our position as well. But I would say the reason why I've mentioned that, sir, is because if the whole idea with any legislation, but specifically this, is to remedy an issue, how can you remedy that issue efficiently, right? How can you remedy that issue efficiently if, for example, you only have 20% of the persons who now have the card, right? I mean, that's a legitimate question, right? Or because, as we know right now, they're going to have to give their consent. You can't force them, right? So if only 20% say, okay, yeah, no, understood. No, understood. I'm just making the point or adding to your point. That's why I thought that your point on that is something that really needs some discussion, because you have, there's something you're trying to achieve by doing this. So I think that that's very important as we go along. As I mentioned, we have some questions, Madam Speaker, and it has been amazing to watch and to experience whether through noting history when you wouldn't have been there, just noting the evolution of our democracy, Madam Speaker. Because, 80 years ago, 88 years ago, we would have been talking about secret ballot. In Nassau, 83 years ago, would have been the Family Islands. 66 years ago, we would have been talking about abolishing the property qualifications. 63 years ago, we would have been talking about the women's right to vote. And of course, Madam Speaker, 58 years ago, we would have been talking about majority rule. So there is no doubt that this is important. But as we advance, Madam Speaker, and I've spoken about this before, and the member from Marco City and the entire caucus has talked about this before as well, that as we advance as a people and we make these changes, I want us to be very careful not to dismiss that as we advance, there are other considerations for us to think about, Madam Speaker, whether it's legislation, whether it's infrastructure, and so forth. My daughter asked me the other day, well, she said, you know, Daddy, when you're talking about expanding the roads, right, expanding the roads in the country, there are so many historic buildings, particularly in Nassau, that a decision is going to have to be made for the sake of infrastructural improvement. There are some buildings that you're going to have to move. And then there are some buildings that are so important you can't move. And so this is one of the challenges of, you know, of being a developing nation and us going towards these goals and so forth. So just similarly, I know I diverted for a second, but similarly, as we make these changes, and this is what we are saying as a caucus, we want to make sure that with these amendments and whatever unintended consequences that come up, unintentionally, obviously, right, that we would be looking forward, looking ahead to mitigate those concerns, because the idea, obviously, as it relates to the electoral process, is to ensure, as it was stated in the objects and reasons, and we could have guessed without reading it, which is the complete efficiency of the process. Yes, there is much angst at times about some aspects of the electoral process, Madam Speaker, and that doesn't mean that it's necessarily warranted. The reality of it is that when it comes to your vote and registering, I mean, you know, I always smile that to this day, you know, and every culture is different. You go in some countries, you ask them who they vote for, they'll tell you right away. You know, the places where they register, and you could register as that, with that particular party, you know. You ask the wrong Bahamian who you vote for, they tell you a thing or two, don't get in my business. So my point is that Bahamians obviously guard their right to vote, right? Very jealously, Madam Speaker. And so just as we go along, we have to ensure, and that's why, again, the point about with these biometric cards, Bahamians obviously are going to have to give consent. It will be very instructive as you go along to see what those numbers are and how Bahamians feel about this, and that's why public education about it is very important. As was said, somebody stopped me on the street about 2 days ago, and they wanted to know if this was electronic voting. It's not electronic voting, and I had to allay their concerns that it wasn't electronic voting. They did have other questions that I'm going to pose right now. But again, because of the lack of information that they felt that they didn't have relative to this, they were very concerned that this was electronic voting, but it's not electronic voting. That everything, that as soon as you get your ballot, that is the same, right? And that's how you're going to be able to vote in the way that you've been used to. But there are concerns, Madam Speaker. So one of the questions, Madam Speaker, is, and I see the member for Freetown isn't in the chamber right now. He's in the precinct, no problem. Thank you. So how are we going to get individuals to consent to use the data for purposes outside of obtaining a passport? How long will the data be stored? Who will have access to it? And let me just say, in terms of full disclosure, some of this, Madam Speaker, some of this was explained as best as possible to us, okay? So this is important because these are questions that the Bahamian people are asking, okay? We believe that the data should be encrypted and accessed only by authorized personnel, Madam Speaker, and that we need a robust investment in the Data Protection Commission so they have the resources to monitor compliance, investigate complaints, and impose penalties, Madam Speaker. How much will the entire exercise cost? I do note, Prime Minister, that you would have pointed to the Leader of the Opposition, that this is allocated in the 25-26 budget. And so we are going to look at that in terms of the cost, and we hope that that is adequate, Madam Speaker. Payments of acts, will they have to pay for these new biometric cards? That's always a legitimate question, Madam Speaker. Will they have to pay for these cards, and what will be the cost of it? What will be the cost to replace it if you lose it, Madam Speaker? And one of the very overarching questions, Madam Speaker, is what security measures will be put in place to ensure against data breaches? I know it has been indicated, obviously, that Canadian Banknote, who's a company who has rendered a number of services for the government, is deeply involved with this, Madam Speaker. You wanted to say something now? Oh, okay, no problem. Give me a second. But it's interesting. During I think it was the budget debate, we asked if there was a foreign company involved in this process. Yeah, and we specifically asked if it was Canadian Banknote, but we asked that question. We asked the question, and the member for Freetown was being very coy and evasive. Cute.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Freetown.
I am his looks, Madam Speaker. I'm never cute. Madam Speaker, it may be an opportune time. No, you can call me cute. I am cute. Madam Speaker, the question asked was a foreign company involved in the election management? The answer is no, and still remains no. But the member for St. Barnabas asks, how will the consent be obtained? And it must be in writing. And the Parliamentary Commissioner and his team will see to that. As to the data protection, the fact that you require consent is respecting the data privacy with regard to the passport element of it. The information will be kept. When the Parliamentary Commissioner gets it, they will be data controllers for the purpose of the data they have. They currently keep your existing voters card information continuously now. And so they continue to maintain it, except when you die, they delete you from the register. But because a permanent register is kept, the information has to be kept continuously and permanently. Madam Speaker, as to security, we on this side have a policy that when you deal with serious matters, you must go look. So, for instance, you don't spend $17 million without looking, right? So, in this instance, Madam Speaker, I can say I personally visited the premises of Canadian Banknote to see the process by which they make our passports, which is impressive. They also print our $50 notes and our $100 notes. And Madam Speaker, the card will be, the details of the card will be set out in the regulation. But the cyber incident response team, the Bahamas has one, has a cyber security policy. The Parliamentary Registration Department takes its data very seriously. It currently has data stored. People try to attack government systems continuously. And Madam Speaker, we rely on the same data security provisions that everybody else does. And so, Madam Speaker, it is a matter, again, that a lot of these issues are properly directed to the Parliamentary Commissioner, who I think has shown, Mr. Duncanson, Mr. Taylor, and now Mr. Thompson, has shown that they commune with political parties, political organs, in a professional manner. In fact, I had a complaint with Mr. Taylor that the opposition got a copy of a register before we did, but that's because they asked first. That's because you asked first. And so, Madam Speaker, the bottom line to it is that if they ask, they get it. And that's the reality of it. I don't fall trapped to politics, Madam Speaker. I was born on the rock. I spent my first years on the rock, so I'm sufficiently seasoned not to trouble myself with that. But those are the answers to the initial questions.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Speaker. Thank you, Member for Freetown, for answering those questions. There was a question of getting individual consent to use data for the purposes outside of obtaining a passport. Didn't you answer that?
Madam Speaker, to be clear, once you give your data for a purpose, for it to be used for any other purpose, you have to consent. And so you gave your fingerprints, your photo to get your passport. In some countries, they have a system that the government can only ask you for the same thing once, and they have to distribute it amongst all of their departments. We don't have that here. And so although the passport information is a government agency, for it to be used for any other purpose, you have to consent, and that's what the consent issue is. But if you don't want to consent, you can be fingerprinted and photographed again if you don't want to consent.
Or you could just leave it.
Or you could just leave it.
And then we'll have to find out why you don't want to look at that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Y'all have a bona fide young.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, we are looking forward, as has been communicated from the Leader of the Opposition to the correspondence to the Prime Minister, of which the Prime Minister responded. We are looking forward to the opportunity to meet with both the Parliamentary Registration Department and Canadian Banknote to facilitate any additional questions that we have. And so we are looking forward to that in the continued spirit of consultation, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, as I prepare to take my seat, Madam Speaker, these amendments, vitally important, Madam Speaker, to the electoral process in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The Bahamian people are better served. We are all better served, Madam Speaker, obviously, when things are as transparent as they can be. There are obviously misconceptions that have to be dispelled, Madam Speaker, and the ability to dispel those misconceptions, Madam Speaker, are best served in transparency and wide consultation, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, on behalf of the people of St. Barnabas, Madam Speaker, we thank you for this opportunity to contribute in this debate. I see here there was one other question, Madam Speaker. Who will get the contract for these biometric voter registration cards? How transparent are we going to be with that? That will be important for the Bahamian people to know. And will the contract be a long-term service one? Is that something that you can answer? Sorry? Oh, that's all right. No, okay, no problem. And you want to answer those? No. Yeah. So you no? No?
The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Freetown.
it's sometimes disconcerting when it's being said that you've decided that the data will only reside in one place. So if they're suggesting that Canadian banknotes should have it for the passports, we want to put all of this sensitive information somewhere else as well. That just does not make logical sense. In my contribution, Madam Speaker, I thought it was clear that a policy decision was made that you don't want Bahamians' private data all over the place, sensitive data, and that drove the decision-making inclusive of the reputation and the delivery by Canadian banknote as spoken to by the Prime Minister for our other secure data and other control needs.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Question if there were any other vendors involved, or, you might have been able to, there might have been a situation where there's some other vendors involved, so thank you. So Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, the government at times, well, most times, a lot of times, Madam Speaker, they would prefer this opposition, Madam Speaker. They would prefer the opposition just to sit and be quiet. But that's not our, yes, but that's not our jobs. That's not our jobs. Elections have consequences, Madam Speaker. And in 2021, the Bahamian people said that they would sit over there and we would sit over here. And until the next election, when the rules will be reversed, Madam Speaker, it is our job. It is our jobs, Madam Speaker, to ask the questions not on our behalf as individuals, but on behalf of our constituents and on behalf of the Bahamian people, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, thank you very, very much, Madam Speaker, and God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member Asmini.
I know we are near the 1 o'clock hour, but my colleague, the member for Golden Gates, assures me that she can seek to wrap by that time or shortly after that time. So in case we go beyond 1, out of an abundance of caution, I would move now that we sit beyond 1 simply to complete Golden Gates' contribution.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House proceed beyond the 1 p.m. hour. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of this House will proceed beyond the 1 p.m. hour.
Madam Speaker, thank you for that indulgence. I will try not to be long. Of course, as usual, I give glory and honor to God for allowing me to stand in this honorable place and represent the good people of Golden Gates. I want to join in support of the Parliamentary Elections Amendment Bill 2025 on behalf of those same good people of Golden Gates. But I also want to join the member for Freetown in thanking and recognizing our parliamentary commissioner who sits in the gallery along with his wonderful team who work so hard and have even more hard work coming in the next few months. We want to thank you all for your work, for being here today to support us. Madam Speaker, this bill continues to represent a step forward and progress in this administration's commitment to modernizing the Bahamas, as Freetown did so well by going through the 20 clauses in the bill to help those who are listening to recognize that this is a very simple amendment. This is a very simple bill that we are presenting today, and it's in the spirit of efficiency, accountability, and progress. And of course, based on many of the contributions you will hear today, you will understand that the need for this change is very clear, as was also noted by our honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. Madam Speaker, the OAS recommended 8 years ago that the Bahamas modernize its electoral systems. And 8 years later, somehow we still have people saying that it's happening too fast. We live in an age where we can see countless examples of technology enhancing security and efficiency in every aspect of our lives, from banking to healthcare, from education to commerce, and yes, that includes our passports that you've heard so many of us allude to today. And this already includes biometric data. Madam Speaker, the same biometric data that can be used for these same voters' cards. Now, Madam Speaker, I know when people hear the word biometric, they may be confused. So for those who may be less familiar with the concept, it can sound strange, and I've heard someone say online, little sci-fi, I don't know. So it's easy to imagine all kinds of conspiracies when you hear people talking about biometric systems for voting. And there's definitely a need for us to demystify that concept. Biometrics, Madam Speaker, refers to recognizing a human by their physical characteristics. As the bill denotes, it says biometric data and features means digitized fingerprints, which means taking your fingerprints, machine-readable facial recognition or facial images, which we do at many airports, and digital signatures. Everyone who uses their face or fingerprint to unlock their phones, Madam Speaker, is using biometrics. That's something that we're very familiar with on a daily basis, so we don't want the terms or the jargon to put people in any place where they are uncertain. If you have a passport, you already have a biometric ID. And it's a basic concept that enhances security and has been used actually for many, many years. But Madam Speaker, this bill is about more than just upgrading the voters' cards. Although I must say having a handwritten card, and Bahamians lament this all the time, with a picture, as the member for Cadell, Rumkik, and San Salvador said, Scotch tape picture, it feels more like 1955 as opposed to 2025. So, therefore, I will ask the members opposite, and I believe that they will agree since they're the ones who we have continued to acknowledge, laid the groundwork for these biometric cards. But I have to ask, isn't it about time that we upgrade to these handwritten cards? You do agree with that? You support that? Good. The biometric card, combined with the electronic poll books, addresses real challenges like the long wait times at polling stations, manual errors in voter verification, and the need for more secure identification methods. By modernizing these processes, we ensure that every Bahamian can exercise their democratic right efficiently and securely, which is most important. It's important to note, Madam Speaker, that no one will be disenfranchised by this upgrade. People who want to give it some more time, and this is important, Madam Speaker, for voters to understand. If you want to see how it works before you get the new card, you have the option, that remains, of using your current voter's card in the next election. No one's forcing you to use a new card next year if you don't want to. Vote with the old card, observe the new process, and you will see that a lot of the noise we're hearing is much ado about nothing. As for all the concerns about errors or the cards not working, this bill explicitly states that if biometric verification fails, voters can still cast their ballot through visual verification and registry confirmation. Paper backups will be at every polling station. So it's literally the same system we've used for decades, the system that has delivered valid election results. But now we have a more secure card and a faster way to look up and confirm registered voters. This bill also ensures that the voter registry is updated every 10 years. And there are regular time frames for returns of writs, nomination day, and election day, based on the date public notice is given for the general election. So this is all really as non-controversial as it gets, Madam Speaker. We're making very straightforward, needed improvements. And hopefully the public education campaign on this initiative will alleviate the concerns that members of the public have. Madam Speaker, I wonder as I listened to St. Barnabas, and I wonder as I listened to the commentary from the opposition, if they realize sometimes, especially when we have these non-controversial bills, that a good, non-controversial idea you can support without the manufactured outrage, all the extra, especially for this one where you played a role in the legislative foundation. It wasn't controversial back then, and so why is it controversial now? The same questions you should have had back then when you laid the framework were not brought up.
Is he answering the question?
You answering my
You answering the
question.
question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. She recognized me, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just wish to be clear. We support the bill, right? We support the bill. We didn't manufacture any outrage. We have expressed some concerns on the record. So just to be clear, Madam Speaker, so that part of the speech the honourable member could, ease up on,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But Freetown said it, Their tactics are straight out of I think he said the politics playbook, the fake outrage. Fake outrage, yeah. Madam Speaker, while I'm addressing this manufactured outrage, I'm going to speak to some recent claims, quite briefly, about labor agreements. Madam Speaker, I'm addressing manufactured outrage. That's the relevance. Out of the playbook. Out of the playbook, yeah. Madam Speaker, the opposition and their surrogates would have you to believe that this government isn't honoring the commitments to workers. But the facts will tell a different story, Madam Speaker. There's commentary that we're bragging about 57 agreements. And I understand the concern because, as usual, we always say they didn't have one to brag about. So I can understand that they don't like to hear us speaking about the progress we've made, with 57 to date and 58, 59 on the way.
Right? The honourable member,
Point of clarity.
yeah, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, point of order, Madam Speaker.
Are you yielding?
But, Madam Speaker, yes, point of order. Point of order, thank you. Madam Speaker,
What is the
Madam
point of
Speaker,
order?
Madam Speaker, the honourable member for Golden Gates is talking about something not connected to this particular debate. But Madam Speaker, she said, she talked about the persons who would have made some statements, if you will, paraphrasing, relative to this issue of 56 signed agreements. It's the president of the Bahamas Public Service Union that talked about this government's inability to fulfill what is it committed to. Right, Madam Speaker? So let's be clear. We're not talking about
Yes.
just somebody without a title. We're talking about the president of the Bahamas Public Services Union. So if the honourable member is going to call into question the president of the union, say that. But don't just have this just anonymous person out there. So say that the union officials are saying that the government is lying.
Your commentary, St. Barnabas, because you come here all the time and quote the person who just noted. So now you've made it very clear who you are quoting, and I can continue and address what you have just said. Okay.
That's not 30 minutes, She can say whatever she wants.
Thank you, like he normally does. And he normally brings up everything he wants, and it's 30 minutes. Yeah, 30 minutes
As
is
long
up.
as it's parliamentary.
Madam Speaker,
He apologized, yeah?
these 57 agreements represent billions of dollars in the pockets of public and private sector workers. And, we are going to continue to tout our success. As I say, there's more in the wings. And I want to help St. Barnabas and any other surrogates with the facts. We already have submissions. From several unions, Madam Speaker, to sign the second round of agreements during this term, very shortly, in a few weeks. These unions would not sign new agreements if their current agreement was not honored. A new agreement indicates the substantive fulfillment of the previous agreement. Madam Speaker, if there is, however, a clause in an agreement that is still being worked on, that doesn't mean there's no progress being made on the agreement. It certainly doesn't indicate, you brought it in here, you bring it in here frequently, so I'm clarifying for you and whomever you need. It certainly doesn't indicate a wider issue of agreements not being honored. One clause in one agreement is not representative of all agreements. Madam Speaker, I'd also like to remind that one or two specific union leaders, if they want to discuss these issues, St. Barnabas, pay attention. This is specifically for you.
Come right back with it again.
So I'd like to remind those one or two specific union leaders, if they want to discuss the issues, that they can do so at our quarterly meetings. And some of them have been notably absent at those quarterly meetings. They can also call or text our Director of Labor, our Labor Relations Unit, or me. I continue to hope that we have an open door and an open line policy. And if you want to meet with the Prime Minister, you can schedule an appointment. That would be much more effective than standing outside the office of the Prime Minister, because his office is inside the building, not outside. And he is accessible, and you know how to reach him. You know, Madam Speaker, sometimes I wonder if those persons are taking advice from the opposition, and because they look like they're more into theatrics than solutions. Madam Speaker, I absolutely support the unions as the Minister of Labor. Our administration has demonstrated that we absolutely support labor. They are our partners. We seek to continue to improve our labor environment, and there will always be matters of concerns to be addressed. That's why we have social dialogue, and even the ILO advocates for mature social dialogue, and we've created that environment here locally, which did not exist under the previous administration. So I'm under no illusion that our track record on labor is not perfect. But when certain people choose to treat isolated matters as if they're indicative of a trend, then it's simply disingenuous. And while there are a few outstanding matters being actively addressed, either case by case or as a part of the overall labor reform process, we've made tremendous progress across labor. There's no basis to claim that we aren't honoring agreements. A clause or two in an agreement or two that is actively being addressed does not paint that picture. Madam Speaker, a clause or two in an agreement or two. Clear? Clear? These agreements have 30, 40, 50 clauses. So we are honoring agreements. And if there are one or two clauses that are being actively addressed, we are doing our part. You can't speak, St. Barnabas. Your administration wanted nothing. Madam Speaker, pointing to a minority of cases and attempting to mischaracterize all our efforts on this minority would be much like pointing to the 14 unions that are fully compliant with their obligations legally and painting them with the same brush of the other 35 unions that are non-compliant, Madam Speaker. And let me put that into context. We have 49 active unions in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Only 14 are fully compliant, Madam Speaker. And I want to give kudos to our new Registrar of Trade Unions and her team, who are actively ensuring accountability across all unions. That process is underway. She's begun a process of sending notices to unions, having conversations with them so we can clean it up and ensure that all are compliant. Now, Madam Speaker, there's one union that's not been compliant since 2016. I wonder which union that is. Yeah. It's amazing how the least compliant, Madam Speaker, seem to make the most noise. They're calling out the government, but they really need to call out themselves. They're calling out the government on salary reviews. And Madam Speaker, I had the opportunity to call these different entities, and I've been advised that they haven't even talked to the people at AMMC, at UB, at PHA, who have advised that the progress is being made on these matters. But Madam Speaker, I digress. The point is, There are those who talk about issues, and there are those who fix the issues. There are those who complain about the problems, and there are those who solve the problems. There are those who are committed to lip service, and there are those who are committed to public service. And you will find, Madam Speaker, that this Davis administration is in the latter group. Madam Speaker, please permit me to give a very brief update on my beloved Golden Gates. We had an amazing summer in our constituency. We still have one more event on the 23rd of August, which is our 4th annual back-to-school slip and slide event and school supplies giveaway. It's the last fun event for the summer where children will be able to cool off, have fun, get their school supplies, and have a wonderful day with their MP. Our Summer Scoops free ice cream all summer long program continues to be a success. We enjoy seeing our children come for their free ice cream, their cool treats, and to play games at the constituency office throughout the summer. I also want to continue to congratulate our graduates who are leaving school and beginning a new journey, which we continue to pray for them as they embark on this new leg of their life journey. And I also look forward, as the summer ends, to reconnect with our seniors and resume our seniors' dates within the next few weeks. Madam Speaker, I'm also excited about launching our Golden Gates Youth Council. We are allowing our young people to lead from the front, finding wholesome ways for them to engage in our community. And if they follow our Golden Gates Youth TikTok page, there's more details coming today. So, Madam Speaker, returning to the bill before us today, the Parliamentary Elections Amendment Bill 2025, which represents meaningful change for our voting process. It leverages technology to enhance security and efficiency at a time when global innovation is being led by technology. This Davis administration came to office with a mandate for reform, and we are delivering. The bill represents another milestone as we improve systems throughout the government and across our nation. The Parliamentary Elections Amendment Bill 2025 has the full and unequivocal support of Golden Gates, and I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member of Sisamada.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the honourable member, in our view, just conceded a very important point, Madam Speaker. When we pass this piece of legislation here today, Madam Speaker, because we do support it, right? And if anyone does not adhere to any clause in this piece of legislation to be, you are violating this act. I'm not a KC, but that's the reason you're violating this act. So you can't, so the point is, Madam Speaker, the honourable member cannot say that the government is missing their promises, fulfilling their promise on certain clauses, and by virtue of that, that they can be held accountable for not honouring the agreement. The honourable member, Madam Speaker, I wasn't finished. Madam Speaker, let me finish, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. But you'll have a chance, The Speaker's recognized me, Madam Speaker. The honourable member said that missing one or two clauses, paraphrasing, missing one or two clauses does not mean you're not honouring the agreement, Madam Speaker. It does mean you're not honouring the agreement if you... And why in particular, Madam Speaker, is it those clauses that pertains to money that they're not honouring? There is no way you can honour an agreement by not fulfilling 2 and 3 clauses. That means you're not honouring the agreement.
The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Golden Gate.
Let me clarify for the final time for St. Barnabas, because he misquoted. Honoring the agreement and the clauses that are not being honored are actively being fulfilled and actively being worked on. We have to work on it for it to happen. You can't understand that because you all didn't even sit at the table with the unions to negotiate and begin the process. Every union agreement takes a negotiation process. After it has been signed, if there are clauses that need to be addressed, they are actively being worked on. I have called and spoken to entities, state-owned operations myself, who said, well, this is what we're doing, contrary to what was being said on the outside, but no one ever came and asked what we were doing or requested. So these clauses, in order for them to be addressed, we have to work on them together in a spirit of social dialogue. I am informed by the Ministry of Finance and by these entities that these clauses are actively being worked on, and as a result, they will be fulfilled.
So then, Madam Speaker, the member for Golden Gates, Madam Speaker, and I thank her for clearing it up. My question is for the member for Golden Gates. So why then are these union leaders expressing these concerns? No, we have to ask them. Why we have to ask, you've made a claim. You've made a claim. You've made a claim that the
Honourable member,
the
honourable members,
I
honourable
don't get
members,
it, Madam Speaker.
honourable members.
These were once their surrogates. Now you're saying that they are surrogates. Y'all made the agreement. Y'all made the agreement with the memorandum of understanding, and now y'all haven't fulfilled it, and now you want to throw these union leaders under the bus?
Honourable member. What's wrong with you? Get right out of character sometime.
Madam
The chair recognizes
Madam
the honourable
Speaker, it's
member
clear,
for free
it's
time.
clear that St. Barnabas doesn't understand negotiation.
Don't be mad.
It's,
You're mad. You're mad.
You were there when you all signed that memorandum.
Honourable member, there's a member on his feet.
You didn't say that when I was young.
I didn't acknowledge you, so that's why I didn't cover you. I did not acknowledge you.
let us calm down.
I have acknowledged him. The chair recognizes the honourable. Let me say it for him again. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Freetown.
Madam Speaker, it's just amazing when folks don't understand trade union negotiations. I happen to be on the trade union side, and if you ever stop complaining, then that's it. But Madam Speaker, I had asked for an extension for Golden Gates to finish, and she's finished, so I now move for a suspension of the business of the House.
Before. Give me 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Honourable member for St. Barnabas. I have before me the rulings and the findings of the Committee of Privilege that we shared with you last week. I presume that you would have had an opportunity to view. You haven't viewed the findings in 1 week? Okay, before you leave, I will share it with you, and then we will come back to this on the return of the lunch after the lunch break. Okay? Thank you, honourable member.
Being said, I will move for the suspension to 3 p.m. and when we return Central Grand Bahama, I will take the floor.
Thank you, honourable members. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House be suspended until 3 p.m. As many are in favor, will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m.
All rise!